All right, so this very special demo is just to help you understand printing and how we print for this class. So far you have been looking at all of your images on a computer monitor. And if it was a standard monitor, not a high-def monitor, let's just pretend it's a standard computer monitor. Here's your keyboard. La, 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 la. Here's your image. And it looks amazing. Let's say it's a landscape. It's trees, clouds. And it's just the best thing ever. Ah! That image on your computer only has a resolution, a standard computer screen, of 72 pixels per inch. Which means when you zoom in on it, if you took a magnifying glass to your computer, you see these pixels. But because the computer is made with light, RGB light, red, green, and blue lights that create all of your images, and when you have all those lights turned off, you get black, and when you have all those lights turned on, you get white, the image looks really, really vibrant with millions of colors. And the white is made out of all the lights turned on. What we need to do now is convert that image that you love so much on your computer screen that you've only seen at these low resolutions and for the first time we need to figure out how to make them look good as physical printed objects. So now we are going to take them and put them on our Epson R1900 color stylus printers. Ours is a large format printer, but not the largest format printer. So the paper that goes into it at the largest size that's allowed is 13 inches by 19 inches. Okay? You can also print any size smaller than that, and the two sizes we'll use most are 13 by 19, which is called Super B. I believe it's actually a Japanese printing or art standard, and letter size, which is 8.5 inches by 11 inches. And when we print at 8.5 by 11 inches, letter size, we move the slider to this position. Right there. And you can see the little slider. It will bracket in our pages. And when we want it to be 13 by 19 inches, we move the slider all the way over to here to give you that 13-inch berth. But just because you get the right paper size doesn't mean that you know the quality of the print that's coming out of that machine. So I want to empower you to be able to know that. Be able to make it better. So what is the print resolution we want from our lab? Well, it needs to be the size you want it to be at a standard resolution for our lab of 350 ppi. And that is a whole lot more than 72, right? And that's because when you see something on a printed piece of paper, it's a lot easier for our eyes to kind of focus and zoom in on it. We can physically get closer easily. And we can see when things are just not as sharp as they should be. Our in-focus parts of our pictures, our focus will look sharper in our prints than on the screen. But our mistakes will also be a lot more evident in our prints. So, if it's 350 ppi, how is the color made on a printout? So if this is my landscape now, just like what I see on screen with my tree and everything. How is it making its colors on the paper? Because it's not using light anymore. What is it using?
Dots of pigment.
Yes, it has to use pigmented ink, so colored inks. And our printer actually uses 7 different inks and a gloss coating. But basically, the standard inks are what's called CMYK. And I should use the right colors for the right ones, but here we go. The C stands for cyan. Which is like a bright kind of turquoisey blue. The M stands for magenta, which is a really intense kind of pinkish red. And these are just for standard 4-color printing. The W is for yellow. And it's called CMYK. And so what does the K stand for? Makes all the sense in the world. It stands for black. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And it's because they don't want you to confuse it with blue. So they're this way. Lowercase, big K at the end. CMYK color. Now we have 7 inks, so we actually have a magenta and a red and an orange and a yellow and a blue and a gloss and a matte black and a gloss black. So we've got a lot of inks that make up our image, but basically we need to understand that we're converting millions of RGB lights into 3 or into 4 inks basically on white paper. Can we get millions of colors with this? Not really. We get more like thousands of colors. So to make something print ready, we have to use the best programs we have, like Photoshop, to simulate these colors that we see on screen with the inks. And I'll show you how to do that back on our printers, and it's specific to every printer. Now the problem is, since it's made with pigment, CMYK color on paper, our whites are going to look dull because our whites are just the paper itself. And compared to the bright LED lights or cathode ray tube lights or whatever your monitor is using, compared to that white made with light, paper white's always going to appear dull. But the quality of paper has a lot to do with how bright that white is, right? So we're going to use Epson, only Epson papers, and we want to use 4 or 5-star papers. And that gives a certain thickness to the paper, which can hold up to this pigment load. Epson puts out a ton of ink. I think it puts around 1,640 dots per inch. So that means each pixel is actually made up of tons of little ink spurts just to make each square of color. So the overlapping of those gives you your image. All right, so how do we make this work for us? Well, printing is only the first part of it. So let's say you print an image on the largest size piece of paper, the Super B paper, which is 13 by 19 inches. The problem is you can't fill the image edge to edge on a printer. So here's your landscape. There's always going to be a little bit of a border of white, which is called the bleed zone. And we're not submitting prints just on their own, unprotected. We are putting them into mats. So here's my landscape. And unless you want to spend a lot of your money, we're going to use pre-cut mats. And to make them all look nice and consistent in our critique, we're going to use black pre-cut mats. These can be purchased at Azel's, at Hurwicks, at Hobby Lobby, or at Michael's, or online. But they are pre-cut to certain sizes. And those sizes have an outside dimension and an inside dimension. The most common mat that you will buy, the outside dimension is 11 inches tall, or 11 inches by 14 inches. They can obviously be portrait or landscape format. But then the inside of them is 8 by 10 inches. So if I want to print my landscape to fit within this pre-cut mat that has an opening of only 8 by 10 inches, I need to make sure I print my picture to be only 8 by 10 inches at least 350 pixels per inch to get a really high quality print. Right? Because if I put this mat on this printout, what will happen? I'll do it in blue so you can see. I will only see this much of my picture. Does that make sense? So what we need to do is make the file print ready so that it's sized correctly to fit within our window. Also, pre-cut mats come with a set proportion. This is the rectangle right there. But what happens if your photo is more like 6 inches by 10 inches? Because some photo formats are very different than 8 by 10. Well, then you try to put the 8 by 10 mat around it, and you have an inch on each side here, but then the mat perfectly touches it at the top and bottom. Actually, I have that wrong. So if it's 10 inches, here's my 11 by 14 mat around it, and its opening is 8 by 10. So it's going to have a 1 inch strip of white on the top and bottom, but it's going to touch along the 10 inch length. And that looks crummy too, right? Because now it's like you have a letterboxed photo with a white stripe above and below it. So what is it better to do then? It's better to take your photo and shrink it a little bit. So instead of being 6 by 10, let's make it more like at least 9 by 5.2. So that it has white all the way around it. Make sense? That will just look a lot better. That's the most common mat size, the 11 by 14 on the outside. So 14 inches this way, 11 inches this way, 8 by 10 on the inside. 8 inches this way, 10 inches this way. But, and the paper we would use for that, standard paper is just regular letter size paper, which is what you're supposed to buy for yourself. Epson quality, either ultra premium presentation matte or glossy, which is 8.5 by 11. That 8.5 by 11 goes onto the mat like this, so there's a little bit of overlap, and you'll tape it behind. So you take the mat board with its window, and you take your printed photo, and it overlaps the edge of the mat a little